Welcome back. Our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, has covered a lot of stories in a lot of places, many of them dangerous, hazardous, never quite like this, however. Sunday marks the one-year anniversary of the earthquake that triggered the tsunami in Japan, which then led to the Fukushima nuclear disaster. To this day, that area, for good reason, is called the exclusion zone, and that's where Richard went. He found that time had stopped and life has yet to return as Japan deals with the fallout.
A year ago, the earth suddenly snapped and Japan was convulsed by the most powerful earthquake in its history. An hour later, a massive tsunami swept 6 miles inland, swallowing entire towns and setting off a triple meltdown at a nuclear complex on the coast near the city of Fukushima. When the 3 reactors exploded, a cloud was shot into the sky of steam mixed with particles of radioactive cesium. It contaminated hundreds of square miles. A year later, a 12-mile radius around the crippled nuclear plant has become Japan's exclusion zone. The calendars in this once busy factory haven't changed since the meltdown. The factory's owner, Hisami Iwamoto, made electronics here. He was the last person to leave town.
There are buildings, there are cars, and until yesterday, there were people. They are friends, but the very next day, there was no one.
Access to the exclusion zone is forbidden, but former residents can make brief visits to collect valuables.
We've just entered into the exclusion zone. There are houses here, restaurants,
sushi and radishes, it looks like.
Schools, factories. This was a densely populated area, and now it's all empty. Nobody's here at all, and it's very eerie.
And very radiated.
So how far are we away from the plant itself?
About 5 kilometers.
As we got closer to the reactor, our monitors screamed in alarm. Radiation levels were 100 times higher than normal levels of about 0.2.
We're at 17.3, 17.7. We've already reached 19. Now it's at 22, 23.
The area in the immediate vicinity around the power plant itself is still very much a hotspot.
It's even hotter here. These rare images show the mangled nuclear plant today. It will never, can never, operate again. Next stop on this tour, Iwamoto's hometown of Okuma. A year ago, population 10,000. Today, 0.
This drugstore has been like this since the earthquake struck. All of the bottles thrown onto the floor, a moment frozen in time, entire towns abandoned, and no one's coming back.
The only sign of life here, herds of feral cattle, abandoned by their owners.
The bull in there, watch out.
People left in a hurry, leaving clothes behind at a laundromat.
It reminds me of when I was a kid. They used to show in school these day-after movies, what would happen in the event of a nuclear holocaust, how the world would become radiated. That's what it feels like here. This is a ghost town.
Oh, what's wrong?
Look over here. There's someone's child's toy scooter, the garage door's down, basketball hoop up. Somebody lived here. It's as if some sort of plague came over the town.
Yes, paf, and they all disappeared at once.
This was your house?
New house.
2 weeks after the explosion, almost every house was looted. And because the earthquake destroyed the doors, it was easy.
So all that damage was from the earthquake. So it's like you were attacked twice. First, the earthquake hit, and then once you survive that, then you get this cloud of radioactive dust raining down on the city.
Actually 3 times, but then we looted.
Oh, and then you were looted. Yes, I forgot about that.
When we were there today, you seemed to be able to laugh at the situation, even joke about how strange it was.
This was my office.
This was your office? You still have your jackets and ties ready to go?
How have you been able to retain a positive spirit throughout all of this?
Since I can't return to the past, I think of what I can do next, and then I point myself in that direction. In my head, I'm only thinking about starting a new life, doing new work in a new land.
What do you do with all of this area, miles and miles around the plant, that is useless, that is dangerous? Do you just write it off and forget it ever existed and never go back?
They'll never get rid of the radiation, so they should completely seal this area off and dump all the contaminated material from the rest of the country here.
You think the town should be sacrificed for the good of the other communities?
That's right. In my mind, there's no more Okuma. This isn't just a ghost town, it's a town of death.
Okuma may be lost, but Fukushima City, 40 miles away, was never evacuated. Yet it was contaminated. Wind carried the cesium here, and snow brought it down. Monk Koyuabe watched it fall.
What happened to Fukushima when that snow filled with radioactive particles started falling on this city?
We were suddenly faced with a new reality, where everything was contaminated by radiation, and a snow that would never melt began falling on us.
The government is trying to clean up Fukushima, a city of 300,000. But where do you even begin? First, you hose down the roof. Then cut all of the leaves off all of the trees. Then dig up the top 2 inches of soil in your yard. And finally, temporarily stash it here, a former baseball diamond, now covered with giant bags. Each one, somebody's radioactive garden. Toshiaki Kusano, a former colonel, leads the cleanup effort.
The people of Fukushima are really frightened, so it's important to meet residents and to communicate with them directly to remove their fears. We can definitely make this cleanup work.
But Colonel Kusano needs more storage space. At a town hall meeting, he asks residents to let the city bury radiated soil in their own backyards. Okoye Suzuki doesn't let her daughter play in the backyard anymore.
Our hotspots are over here.
She has hotspots, places where radioactive particles have concentrated.
This brick here, under this drainage pipe, it is a hot spot.
It was higher before, but no matter what we do, that is as low as it goes.
Like everything else in the neighborhood, the little schoolhouse where Suzuki's daughter goes was also covered by radiation. The teachers wrote a book about the meltdown and the cleanup, trying to explain it to the kids.
Blast. That day, there was an explosion. Rain cloud brought us nuclear fallout. I see you're getting upset reading this book, thinking about all that's happened. This school that was so hopeful, work of hope, is closing down. Shori is now 6. Have you noticed her change? Has her personality changed as a result of all of this?
One by one, her friends have left. So I think she's feeling very lonely. Just thinking about it makes me cry.
Because radiation is much more harmful for growing children, kids in Fukushima receive free body scans. The increased cancer risk may be small for adults, but it's 10 times higher for children. Monk Koyuabe is pitching in, clearing contaminated soil from roads near schools.
This is a hot spot. We measured just across from an elementary school.
He's even donated land above his temple to store the community's waste.
If we don't take possession of the radioactive waste, we can't bring back the smiles of the people.
The government says that your efforts, while appreciated, are illegal, that you are stockpiling, in effect, nuclear waste on your property.
If there's no place to keep it, you can't decontaminate. And if you can't clean it up, you can't live there. So your only option then is to run away.
Run away, like they had to in Okuma, radiated for decades to come. The town that died.
Richard Engel back with us. Because you can't live there, you can't have your little daughter wearing a mask and having a hot spot in your front yard. Are we going to see this huge population shift? Is it already underway? And do they get compensated?
The people who lived in the actual exclusion zone have gotten some compensation. Not a lot, $15,000 to $30,000. It's an initial payment. But those are just the people who live in that 12-mile radius. The people who live in Fukushima, however, haven't gotten anything because the government's position is that Fukushima can be cleaned up. And the woman who has hot spots in her yard, that's in Fukushima City. That's where they're trying to clean it up. So far she hasn't gotten anything, and they're just hoping that they can dig out all of these invisible particles.
But this stuff never leaves us. It never goes away. So localize this for us. If this had been New York, Chicago, LA, San Diego.
If you have a house, let's say in just outside New York, in any suburban town, and you have a couple acres or a half-acre plot, what they would have to do, what they would try and do, is hose off your roof, then let all the water drip to the ground, and all the particles get washed away, theoretically. Then cut the leaves off all the trees. Once that's on the ground, dig up everything. Dig up the pebbles, the shrubs, the trees that were cut down.
Bury it in on itself.
And bury it in on itself. Which, of course, means it's going into the ground, it's going into the water. And by the way, it doesn't really work. Because next time it rains, the rain will find a little nook and cranny in the house that you didn't get, or it blows in from another house, or it gets washed down from the hills by the snow. So it doesn't go away. And you can reduce it, but it doesn't, you can't get it out of the system.
Consequences go on. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Great piece of reporting. When we come back.